This is a narrative reconstruction based on real-world radio lore, documented ghost ship distress calls, and testimonies of operators who claimed to receive messages from vessels long since lost at sea. Names, dates, and some details are blended or anonymized for privacy, but the emotional core and the maritime context are drawn from real accounts and historical phenomena. The story begins in a room that never sees the sun. It sits at the edge of the world on a cold stretch of North Atlantic coastline where the wind never really stops and the fog comes in like a living thing. From the outside, it looks unremarkable. A squat, concrete building with salt stains on its walls, a rusting antenna mast clawing at the sky, a chain-link fence rattling whenever the gusts pick up. Most people driving past would never guess that inside, men and women listen to the voices of the sea. Ships, aircraft, distress calls, fragments of human fear and routine floating through the static. It is here, on a winter night in the late 1970s, that a man we'll call Peter Hale sits alone at a console, headphones clamped over his ears, eyes on a row of flickering dials. He is 58 years old, shoulders rounded by decades of leaning toward radios. His hair is gone the color of the foam that forms on the tops of waves in a storm, somewhere between white and gray, wind-roughened. Once, a long time ago, he was a naval wireless telegraphist sitting in metal rooms inside metal ships, capping out messages in Morse while the hull around him trembled under the impact of distant guns. Later, when the war ended and the sea needed less steel and more commerce, he slid into civilian work, coast radio stations, search and rescue coordination, the invisible threads of communication that keep the ocean's traffic from drifting into chaos. Tonight, his world is not war, but it feels no less serious. On his desk are logbooks, each page a neat grid of time, frequency, call sign, message. In front of him, large HF receivers hum softly, their panel lights tiny constellations in the dim. Behind him, a wall map shows the North Atlantic in pale blue, dotted with pins that mark traffic lanes, reporting points, places where bad things have happened. Wrecks, collisions, disappearances. Outside, beyond the thick glass of a small, salt-flecked window, there is only darkness and the sound of the wind sweeping across the empty parking lot and down toward the rocks. He has the night watch, midnight to 8. If you ask him, in later years, what it felt like to work nights in a place like this, he will say, it felt like being a lighthouse for voices. Ships hundreds of miles away, beyond the horizon, would send their words out into the atmosphere, and those words, dots and dashes, carrier waves vibrating at frequencies human ears can't directly hear, would slant down out of the sky and land on his antennas. He would coax them out of the noise, lift them out of the static, and translate them back into human meaning. It is a kind of listening that goes deeper than most people ever need. If you do it long enough, the hiss and crackle of HF radio become almost like a second language, and you begin to hear things other people would miss. A faint carrier under the roar of interference, a pattern inside the chaos, the difference between a storm-distorted signal and the voice of someone truly in trouble. That difference has saved lives. And it is why, on this particular night, when something impossible breaks through the static, Peter is the first to know. The shift begins quietly. The mid-ocean check-ins have come and gone, cargo ships giving position reports as they cross waypoints, a tanker relaying a medical question about a crewman with chest pain, a fishing vessel further north calling it a weather update with the grim humor of men who work where storms are born. He has logged them all with neat, precise handwriting, the pen moving almost on its own while his mind wanders in the spaces between calls. Around 2 in the morning, traffic thins. HF propagation shifts with the night, some frequencies dying away as the ionosphere changes, others opening up like new lanes on an invisible highway. He adjusts his receivers, tuning gently across bands, listening to the rise and fall of static, the occasional distant conversation in languages he doesn't speak but recognizes by rhythm. He is not expecting anything special. Most night shifts are a mix of boredom and small tasks, equipment checks, log reviews, the occasional routing of a message to the National Rescue Center. Even serious calls, real maydays, ships on fire or taking on water have a pattern. They come on certain frequencies, in certain formats, following international rules hammered into every operator's training. Which is why what happens at 2:17 local time feels wrong from the first second. It begins as a faint increase in background noise on one of the older maritime bands, a frequency that has been largely abandoned as newer systems take over. He has one receiver parked there out of habit, the dial set like an ear half turned toward the past. The static lifts, thickens, as if the band is taking a breath. Then, underneath the hiss, he hears it. 3 sharp tones, equally spaced. Then another 3. Then another. He straightens in his chair. Old-timers used to talk about this kind of thing, improvised distress signals, operators with failing equipment banging out anything they could to manage to say, "Look at me, listen to me, I'm here." But that's not what this is. The tones are too regular, too clean, like something produced by a functioning keying circuit. He leans closer, fingers adjusting the fine tune, bringing the sound into clearer focus. The tones stop. There's a pause. Then, as the noise thins just enough for the human voice to thread through it, he hears a man speaking. At first, the audio is so low that it's more sensation than sound, like hearing someone through a wall in the next room. A male voice, mid-range, speaking English with a slight European accent he can't place immediately. The words are broken by static crashes, their edges torn by atmospheric noise. Station. This is Mayday. Mayday. Peter's hand moves automatically to the logbook. His pen hovers over the page. "Go ahead, station, calling Mayday," he says into his own microphone, reflexes kicking in even as his brain is still catching up. Silence. He glances at the signal strength meter. The needle flickers above the baseline, like a pulse trying to stabilize. Then the voice comes again, stronger this time, as if the transmitter on the other end has been adjusted or propagation has suddenly favored them. "North Shore Radio, this is Cargo Helios. Mayday, Mayday, Mayday." The name makes something itch at the back of his mind. Helios. Greek. He's heard it before, he's sure of it. But in what context? "Helios, this is North Shore," he replies, crisp now, the room narrowing around him. "I read you 3 by 1. Give me your position. What is the nature of your distress?" On the other end, a crackle, a faint background roar that might be wind or machinery or both. "Boiler room flooded. We are taking on water. We are sinking. Require immediate assistance. Repeat, ship is sinking. This is Helios. Mayday, Mayday." His pen begins to write before he tells it to, scribbling down the words in shorthand he's used for decades. BLR FLD, TKGWR, SHP SINK. "Helios, your position. Latitude and longitude, please. Repeat in degrees and minutes." There's a long pause on the frequency, the kind that makes your blood run cold when you're used to men who know their drills. Then, haltingly, as if the operator is reading off a chart in poor light, the numbers come. It's a set of coordinates in the North Atlantic, somewhere out beyond the shipping lanes his station normally watches, but not impossibly far. He writes them, underlines them, repeats them back carefully. The unknown operator confirms. Up to this point, nothing is truly supernatural. Distress calls happen. Flooded boiler rooms happen. Ships sink. Men who have trained their whole lives to send and receive calm, formulaic maydays still sometimes sound like they're about to be swallowed when the water is actually at their ankles. But there are a few small details that stick in Peter's mind even as he moves through the standard responses. "Helios, how many souls on board?" he asks. There is a faint, strange laugh on the other end, so brief he almost thinks he imagined it. Then the operator answers. "41, he says. The number feels oddly specific. Not 40, not about 40, 41. Peter writes it anyway. He alerts the duty officer in the next room, handing over the coordinates, the vessel name, the nature of distress. The officer takes the paper and disappears into the adjoining operations center, where phones and telex lines connect them to rescue coordination authorities, neighboring radio stations, ships at sea. Peter stays at his console. Whatever happens next, he's the wire between this voice and the rest of the world. "Helios, I am relaying your mayday," he says. "Stand by for further instructions. Are your lifeboats ready? What is your current list?" The reply comes back almost immediately, the man on the other end sounding slightly more composed, as if the act of talking to a shore station has given him a handhold. "Lifeboats ready. Ship lists 10 degrees to port. Boiler rooms 1 and 2 flooded. We are losing power." As they speak, something strange happens to the sound of the transmission. The noise floor, normally a constantly shifting carpet of hiss and crackle, seems to drop away. The voice becomes very clear, almost unnaturally so, as if someone has turned down the rest of the world. Peter's too busy to notice it consciously. He asks questions, notes, answers. What cargo? General freight. Weather. Heavy seas, high wind, poor visibility. He asks if any crew were injured. The man hesitates. Some. We will account when possible." Behind his words there are other sounds now. The distant shout of other voices, the muted boom of waves hitting metal, a clatter of something falling. The duty officer returns, a thin folder in hand, brow furrowed. "We're contacting Coast Guard, and we're trying to reach any vessel near those coordinates, but what?" Peter keeps one ear on him, one on the headset. "Can you confirm that call sign?" the officer asks, tapping the paper where Peter has written the ship's designation. Peter recites it from memory, the way the voice on the radio has been giving it. 3 letters, a number, another letter. It rolls easily off his tongue. He has always been good with call signs. The officer looks even more troubled. "That's not in the current registry. Not under that name, not under that call. I had HQ check. Nothing active. But there is..." He trails off as if unsure how to phrase the next part. Peter feels the first tiny chill across his skin. "There's what?" he insists. The officer opens the folder, shows him a photocopied page, slightly smudged. It's an old entry from a Maritime incident ledger, the kind of thing kept in binders on shelves that smell of dust and salt. "It's a decommissioned record," the officer says. "Look at the date." The page describes a cargo vessel named Helios, under a different flag than the one the voice on the radio has claimed, but with the same call sign. It lists tonnage, route, home port, and, in a neat little line near the bottom, its end. Sunk with all hands in storm, North Atlantic, 1953. Peter stares at the line. The date is more than 25 years ago. He feels a pressure behind his eyes, a sensation like being on an aircraft as it begins to descend, the internal and external never quite matching. "Could be a clerical thing," the duty officer says quickly, as if trying to plug a leak. "Names get reused, call signs too, sometimes there's delays." "They don't get reused like this," Peter says softly. It is not an argument. It is a statement of fact from a man who has lived his life inside this system. They don't get reused with a notation like that. The officer has no answer. On the radio, the voice of the Helios operator cuts through the silence in Peter's headset. North Shore, this is Helios. We have lost main power. Switching to emergency. Please confirm assistance underway. Peter swallows. He has a choice here. He could tell the man exactly what is happening in the ops room, that authorities are scratching their heads, that the name of his ship appears in the past tense in a book that smells like old paper. But he anchors himself to the one thing that matters. The man on the other end believes his ship is sinking now. Helios, this is North Shore. Your mayday has been acknowledged. We are working traffic for you. Repeat your position and the nature of distress. He has him repeat everything, every detail, as if more data will make the impossible less so. The coordinates are identical. The flooding is worsening. The list has increased. The background noise changes. There's more shouting now, and a high, thin whine that could be wind and rigging or steam escaping. In the operations room next door, teleprinters chatter. Calls go out to other coastal stations, to naval headquarters, to any merchant ships within a radius of hundreds of miles. One old tanker replies that they are diverting. Another, much closer, says they see nothing on radar. No echo where the Helios claims to be. Air rescue assets are checked. Weather reports are cross-referenced. But out in the black ocean night, there is only the voice. Minutes stretch into a half hour. The tension in the radio room becomes its own living thing. Peter's world has shrunk down to a pair of headphones and a glowing dial. He is aware, dimly, of the officer pacing behind him, of other staff drifting in and out of the doorway to listen. He feels their eyes on the back of his neck. They are all hearing the same thing, yet experience it differently. Some look skeptical, as if waiting for the punchline of a bad joke. Others look pale. Helios, can you see any nearby vessels? Peter asks at one point, hoping for something that will tie this voice to a physical presence. Negative. Horizon is dark, no lights. Sea is very rough. What is your visibility?
Poor. We see nothing. His voice cracks on that last word. The oddity of the situation begins to seep into Peter's bloodstream like cold. The call is on an older wavelength, one that fell out of primary use years ago. The voice uses procedures that feel slightly out of date, older phrasing, an intonation pattern he recognizes from his youth. And now, when he asks what navigation aids the ship is using, the man mentions equipment that should be rare by this decade. No satellite receivers, no modern integrated systems, just a gyro, a magnetic compass, and standard radio direction finders. It sounds like a ship out of time. Peter begins to think of another piece of radio lore he heard in his early days, whispered in bars and over coffee in mess halls. In the 1930s, a ham radio operator named Gordon Cosgrave claimed that he had received SOS messages from the Titanic and the Carpathia, ships that had gone down over 20 years earlier. Long-delayed echoes, he said. Signals bouncing around the ionosphere, trapped, arriving decades late. Scientists called the phenomenon impossible. Radio men called it unsettling. Wikipedia. He'd always written it off as myth. Something about the human brain wants to believe that cries for help can linger, that not everything sinks. But now, with this voice in his ears, with those coordinates on his page, and that photocopied ledger in front of him, the myth feels like a hand on his shoulder. Maybe it's a prank, one of the junior operators says quietly behind him. It is an understandable reaction. People have hoaxed distress calls before, either out of malice or some twisted need to see what they can make the world do. But pranks have a texture, a certain raggedness. This man, whoever he is, knows too much, and in exactly the way someone trained long ago would know it. Peter shakes his head once, not taking his eyes off the workspace. He says, if it is, he's done his homework. Time passes. The clock on the wall crawls past 3, then 4. Outside, the wind has risen. The building creaks slightly, a deep old sound. Inside, the atmosphere is taut. Coffee cools in styrofoam cups forgotten. Cigarette smoke curls toward the ceiling unbroken because no one is moving enough to disturb it. On the frequency, the Helios falters. North Shore. Our operator's voice is thinner now, as if the rig's power is failing. The water is gaining. The engine room is gone. The next word is swallowed by static. Helios, say again. Repeat last. What is your situation? Are you abandoning ship? There is a long, ragged pause. We are preparing boats, the voice says at last. Sea is bad. Many are afraid. I repeat, this is Helios. Ship sinking. Please do not leave us. The last sentence is not standard. It is a human plea. Peter, who has long ago learned to keep emotion out of his transmissions, feels his throat tighten. I will not leave you, he says quietly. We are here. Keep talking as long as you can. Your voice is your line. He means it in a practical sense. So long as the man keeps transmitting, they can track, triangulate, maybe refine the position. But it means something deeper too. The moment someone stops speaking into the void is the moment they accept that no one is listening. In the operations center, more calls go out. A Navy frigate confirms it is steaming toward the coordinates at best speed. An aircraft is tasked to overfly at first light. A nearby merchantman reports they are diverting slightly, though their captain is skeptical. His radar still shows nothing. There is a sense of the world bending, ever so slightly, to respond to an event that, on paper, should not be happening. Just before dawn, as the first hint of gray seeps into the eastern sky, the tone of the Helios transmissions changes. The background noise grows louder, more chaotic. Wind howls directly into the radio room on the other end. There are thuds, shouts, the clatter of something heavy crashing and sliding. The operator is no longer calm. North Shore? North Shore, are you there? I am here, Peter replies. Say your situation. We cannot launch port boats. Too much list. Starboard, men are in. Waves, the man breaks off, a sound half caught between a shout and a sob. I cannot. The captain says. The next part comes in fragments. Tell them we did not. It was not our fault. Static roars, a squeal of overmodulation. Helios, you're breaking up, Peter says sharply. Repeat, what is not your fault? Is there collision, fire, chemical cargo? He is thinking now of the SS Orang Medan legend, which circulated among seamen like a ghost story. A distress call received in the late 1940s from a ship that, when boarded, was found full of dead men with expressions of terror, then exploded and sank before anyone could learn why. The last message from that radio operator, some versions said, was simply, I die. He'd always written it off as myth. Something about the human brain wants to believe that cries for help can linger, that not everything sinks. But now, with this voice in his ears, with those coordinates on his page, and that photocopied ledger in front of him, the myth feels like a hand on his shoulder. Maybe it's a prank, one of the junior operators says quietly behind him. It is an understandable reaction. People have hoaxed distress calls before. either out of malice or some twisted need to see what they can make the world do. But pranks have a texture, a certain raggedness. This man, whoever he is, knows too much, and in exactly the way someone trained long ago would know it. Peter shakes his head once, not taking his eyes off the workspace. He says if it is, he's done his homework. Time passes. The clock on the wall crawls past 3, then 4. Outside, the wind has risen. The building creaks slightly, a deep old sound. Inside, the atmosphere is taut. Coffee cools in styrofoam cups forgotten. Cigarette smoke curls toward the ceiling unbroken because no one is moving enough to disturb it. On the frequency, the Helios falters. North Shore. Our operator's voice is thinner now, as if the rig's power is failing. The water is gaining. The engine room is gone. The next word is swallowed by static. Helios. Say again. Repeat last. What is your situation? Are you abandoning ship? There is a long, ragged pause. We are preparing boats, the voice says at last. Sea is bad. Many are afraid. I repeat, this is Helios. Ship sinking. Please do not leave us. The last sentence is not standard. It is a human plea. Peter, who has long ago learned to keep emotion out of his transmissions, feels his throat tighten. I will not leave you, he says quietly. We are here. Keep talking as long as you can. Your voice is your line. He means it in a practical sense. So long as the man keeps transmitting, they can track, triangulate, maybe refine the position. But it means something deeper too. The moment someone stops speaking into the void is the moment they accept that no one is listening. In the operations center, more calls go out. A Navy frigate confirms it is steaming toward the coordinates at best speed. An aircraft is tasked to overfly at first light. A nearby merchantman reports they are diverting slightly, though their captain's skeptical. His radar still shows nothing. There is a sense of the world bending, ever so slightly, to respond to an event that, on paper, should not be happening. Just before dawn, as the first hint of gray seeps into the eastern sky, the tone of the Helios transmissions changes. The background noise grows louder, more chaotic. Wind howls directly into the radio room on the other end. There are thuds, shouts, the clatter of something heavy crashing and sliding. The operator is no longer calm. North Shore? North Shore, are you there? I am here, Peter replies. Say your situation. We are...
They try to triangulate the source using whatever direction-finding data they can pull from other stations. The results are inconclusive. HF propagation is tricky at the best of times. At night, signals can bounce and bend in ways that make precise location a matter of educated guess. The best they can say is that the signal came from somewhere in that patch of ocean. They comb registries, both national and international, for any currently active vessel matching the Helios details. They find none. They check historical records and find what they already know. A cargo ship of that name, under that call sign, sank in 1953 with all hands and no survivors, in bad weather not far from the coordinates given on the night in question. Possibilities are suggested and discarded. Could it have been a training drill? Someone reading from an old script? Unlikely. No one can find any such exercise scheduled, and drill transmissions are clearly identified as such under regulations. Could it have been a hoax? Some enthusiast with a powerful ham radio and an interest in maritime tragedies. The voice on the tape does not fit the profile. It's not showy, not theatrical, and the background noise is too rich in detail. There is, behind the words, a whole soundscape of a ship in distress. Thumps, shouts, unidentifiable crashes that would be difficult to fake convincingly with 1970s equipment. Could it have been some kind of replay, a recording being transmitted from another station? They investigate that route carefully, checking with commercial and military outfits. No one admits to having such a recording, let alone sending it. The more they look, the stranger it becomes. Every plausible explanation runs aground on some inconvenient detail. The old frequency, the old procedures, the matching call sign, the coordinates lining up disturbingly well with the site of the historical sinking. In the end, the official report hedges. The incident is filed under